And look at that, Hamilton and Vettel touching. And a massive fancy to look up the inside of Hamilton too. And Alonso leads.
Formula One might look like the pinnacle of automotive freedom. Drivers pushing machines to the absolute limit, engineers innovating at breakneck speeds, and teams chasing every millisecond. But beneath all of the glamour lies one of the most strictly regulated sports on the planet. The FIA's rulebook is thicker than most law textbooks, and over the years, it has outlawed everything from spectacular celebrations to entire design philosophies. Some bans are pretty obvious, like no refueling for safety reasons, but others are downright surprising, shaping not just how drivers behave, but how Formula One has evolved as a sport. Today, we're looking at the 5 most fascinating bans in F1 history. These rules have changed the way champions celebrate, how teams strategize, and even how cars are built. What you don't see on the track is just as important as what you do. Now, let's get into it. Post-race burnouts and victory celebrations. When a driver wins a Formula One race, you'd think that they'd be free to celebrate however they'd like. After all, in NASCAR or MotoGP, we see donuts, we see burnouts, even riders jumping into the crowd to celebrate. But in Formula One, the celebrations are heavily restricted. The FIA rules state that after taking the checkered flag, drivers must return their car to the park firm, essentially a secured area where the car can actually be checked over. This is where officials test the machine for compliance and they take mandatory fuel samples. Burnouts or donuts risk using up too much fuel, and if a car doesn't have at least 1 liter of fuel for testing, the driver can be disqualified. It's actually happened before. Esteban Ocon was disqualified back in Hungary 2018 for failing to provide a fuel sample, and Sebastian Vettel lost a podium at Hungary 2021 for the same exact reason. There's also the safety considerations. As soon as the race ends, marshals, photographers, and team members begin to enter the track. A driver spinning the car around unpredictably could create a dangerous situation. Add in the extreme heat of F1 tires, which Pirelli needs back for analysis, and the FIA simply doesn't want victory burnouts happening everywhere. That said, the rule isn't exactly absolute. The FIA does allow winners to perform celebrations if it's safe, it doesn't delay the podium, and it doesn't compromise legality checks. This is why we sometimes see Lewis Hamilton donuts at Abu Dhabi or Mark Verstappen's burnouts after sealing a championship. Still, these are exceptions rather than the norm. But celebration restrictions are just the beginning. F1's refueling ban might be even more shocking. Refueling during races. Today, every F1 car starts the race with enough fuel to reach the finish. But not long ago, mid-race refueling was a cornerstone of strategy. Between 1994 and 2009, pit stops were a chess match for fueling loads and timing. Teams would run light on fuel to qualify faster, then rely on quick refueling to make up ground during the race. This led to some iconic tactical battles during the race. Michael Schumacher, for example, often used light stints and multiple refueling stops to blitz the field in the early 2000s, but it also led to terrifying incidents. The most infamous came at Hockenheim in 1994, when Jos Verstappen's Benetton was engulfed in flames during refueling. The result of spilled fuel igniting in the pit lane? Miraculously, he escaped serious injury, but the images remain unforgettable till this day. Beyond safety, the system was pretty costly. Refueling rigs were expensive. It required extra crew members to be there, and also it added logistical complexity. The FIA argued that this strategy was overshadowing the racing, that results were too dependent on pit timing rather than the driver's actual skill. So in 2010, the ban came into force. Now, if a car runs out of fuel mid-race, that's it. No emergency top-up is allowed, and teams face disqualification if they can't present a legal fuel sample afterward. It's a stark contrast to the old days, and while some fans miss the drama of refueling, the ban has simplified races and forced teams to balance qualifying speed with race endurance. Speaking of safety innovations that were deemed too dangerous, our next ban involves a braking system so advanced it was considered unfair. Dual braking systems. systems. In the 1990s, McLaren developed one of the most ingenious and controversial systems in F1 history, a dual braking system that gave drivers an unprecedented advantage. This system allowed drivers to brake individual rear wheels independently, essentially giving them a third pedal that could brake just inside the rear wheel during cornering. The system worked by allowing drivers to apply different braking forces to the left and the right rear wheel when entering a corner. They could actually brake inside the rear wheel more heavily, which would help rotate the car and reduce understeering. This effectively gave McLaren drivers a massive advantage in car balance and cornering speed. The FIA banned dual braking systems because they were considered a form of driver aid, and that gave an unfair technological advantage to some drivers. The system essentially automated part of the cornering process, reducing the skill required from the drivers to manage the car's balance through corners. More importantly, the system was incredibly expensive and too complex to develop, meaning that only the wealthiest teams could actually afford to implement it. This went against the F1's principles of competitive balance and ensuring that the driver's skill always came first, rather than the technological superiority which could determine races if this were allowed. The ban was implemented swiftly once the FIA understood how the system fully worked, and it remains prohibited today. Modern F1 cars must use conventional braking systems where both rear tires are braked equally. But dual braking systems weren't the only driver aid that was deemed too powerful for the F1. Traction control systems. Perhaps no ban in F1 history has been more controversial or had more impact on driver styles than the prohibition of traction control. This electronic system, which prevents wheel spins by automatically modulating engine power, was legal in the F1 from 2001 all the way up until 2008, before being banned completely from the sport. Traction control worked by monitoring wheel speeds and automatically reducing engine power when the rear wheels began to spin faster than the fronts. This allowed drivers to apply full throttle much earlier out of corners without worrying about losing control, fundamentally changing driver techniques and lap times. The system was so effective that it essentially eliminated one of the most challenging aspects of F1 driving: managing throttle application out of slow corners. Drivers could be much more aggressive with their throttle, knowing that the computer would prevent them from spinning. The FIA banned traction control for multiple reasons. First, it reduced the skill differential between drivers. The driver's advantage in throttle control was largely eliminated. Second, it made cars much easier to drive, reducing the spectacle of seeing drivers fight to control their matches. Most importantly, the ban was about returning F1 to its roots as a pure test of driving skill. Without traction control, drivers must modulate the throttle themselves, using their feet and their experience to find the limit without crossing it. This creates more mistakes, more spectacle saves, and ultimately more exciting racing. The ban remains in place till this very day, and the FIA actively monitors engine mapping and power delivery to ensure that no team is using disguised traction control systems. Active suspension systems. Our final ban represents perhaps the most sophisticated technology ever prohibited in F1: active suspension systems. These computer-controlled systems could automatically adjust each wheel suspension in real time, creating cars that seem to defy the laws of physics. Active suspension worked by using hydraulic actuators controlled by sophisticated computers that could rise, lower, stiffen, and soften each corner of the car independently. The system could keep the car perfectly level through corners, optimize the ride height for different track sections, and even preload the suspension for upcoming corners based on GPS data. Williams pioneered the technology in the early 1990s, and their cars dominated the sport. Their cars could maintain optimal aerodynamic ride height regardless of the fuel load, and it could also eliminate pitch and roll during braking and cornering. and could even adjust suspension settings mid-corner for optimal performance. The system was so effective that it essentially eliminated the compromise between mechanical grip and aerodynamic efficiency. Cars could run extremely low for maximum downforce while maintaining perfect mechanical grip through the suspension system's active control. The FIA banned active suspension in 1994 because it was incredibly expensive, it gave massive advantages to teams that could afford it, and it reduced the importance of driver skill in managing the car's balance. The technology was so advanced that it was essentially turning F1 cars into computer-controlled missiles rather than driver-controlled racing machines. The ban forced teams back to conventional passive suspension systems, where drivers must work with their car's natural characteristics rather than relying on computer control to optimize performances. These bans show that F1 isn't just about building the fastest car, it's about creating a sport where human skill, strategy, and pure racing ability determines the winner. And next time, guys, you're watching an F1 race, remember all of the bans that it took to get to the incredible sport that we see today. Now, guys, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe and turn on those bell notifications so that you never miss another upload. And guys, I'm Ty, and I will catch you on the next one.